Hello, you guys, and thank you so much for tuning into my channel. So, it's been a hot minute since I've been on these YouTube streets, but I just thought I wanted to pop in and say hi and let y'all know I'm still alive, still around. So, for those that don't know me, my name is Christabel, the original Power Ranger princess. And I just I wanted to make a short video for you guys. It is something that for many years I've wanted to talk about, but I think because it's something that is so triggering for so many Black women, both trans women and biological women, and that is colorism. So, if you do not know what colorism is basically the mistreatment or preferential treatment towards someone based on the color of their skin. Very similar to racism, the only difference is that colorism happens with members of the same race. So it's not like racism where you have a white person versus, black person. It's people of the same grouping, just not liking each other based on the simple notion that one is darker and therefore, negative in some way. So for me growing up, I'm going to start off by saying I absolutely love my family and I'm so proud to have come from them. However, there's always been a color complex, more so with my mom. I wouldn't say I've noticed it with other members of my family, but with my mom, definitely. So, my grandmother was much lighter than the rest of us in the family, and her hair just grew a little differently. And she was held up as the standard, as the beauty standard that basically all of my aunts and mom wanted to emulate. So, my mom growing up in apartheid South Africa, a country, that was divided by race, my mom definitely adopted at a unconscious level this idea that having light skin was better, superior, just all of that. So growing up, I mean, my mom and my dad were both lighter than me, and both of my siblings are lighter than me. I was the darkest in my family. And okay, to say my mom was horrified would be an exaggeration, but she certainly was not happy with how dark I came out. I remember growing up, she would tell me stories about after I was born, she would invite her friend over so that they could essentially laugh at how dark my skin was. And as a baby, like my lips were much bigger. Like they looked bigger than what they are. I think because my head was small or whatever, but my nostrils, all of the African features on my face were very, very prominent when I was a baby. And yeah, like essentially, my mom thought those features were ugly, and there was no like intention to hurt me, but I remember growing up, she would always talk about how dark I was. Now, I'm a transgender woman. I identify as trans female. But growing up, obviously, I was a little boy. And I remember, I'll never forget walking from the library with my mom and my mom's friend, being shocked at how dark I was. She was like, "Oh my gosh, what happened to your kid? Like what's going on? Like, why is your kid so dark?" And my mom just laughed it off, and you said, and she was just like, these kids are crazy. They be running out in the sun, getting darker and darker and darker. So I think for her, like, because she was lighter skinned and she never had the experience of being mistreated because her skin was like as dark as mine, it wasn't that much of a big deal, I guess. Now, it's important to note that no, not every conversation we had in the household was related to the color of my skin, but it got brought up. It got brought up. I remember my sister, when she was doing her makeup, she's a little older than me. When she was doing her makeup and doing her hair, she would just look at herself and she'd look at me and she's like, let's look at the mirror. Let's look in the mirror and see who has the lightest skin. And I remember that would make me so angry as a kid. So much so I actually developed huge insecurities because of my skin color. Um, Part of the reason, and it wasn't the only reason. There were other issues and other things going on. But being singled out for having dark skin, and then I mean growing up in a society that tells you that lightness and whiteness is beautiful. So you'd hear these messages from media, but for me, coming from South Africa, being part of the millennial generation, like the generation that was first truly integrated into mixed race schools, being being dark, although I was in the darkest, was hard. And I'll never forget when I was 10 years old. Like, I hated everything that had to do with blackness as a whole because I associated it with how I was getting treated. So I'll never forget, like, this one time, I'm like in the fifth grade, so I was like 10 years old. I took this brick with the intention of like breaking my nose, but being 10 years old, I couldn't really do it. Like, I just kept hitting myself with the brick. Like, I laugh now, but like that was a deep moment for me as a kid. And I hit my nose so much that I, of course, ended up with a nosebleed and not a broken nose. And I ran to my mom and I was like, I broke my nose. We need to go to the doctor. Hoping that, because I'd broken the nose, the doctor would do surgery and make it seem more Western. I remember, yeah, at that age, I was actively asking my mom for skin lighteners. And rightly or wrongly so, she sent me to the doctor so we could find some skin lighteners. And I'll never forget, like, the doctor sitting down and looking at me, and I was still a little kid, and I was explaining um all of these things, and I didn't understand back then, but now as an adult, I can sort of understand why that doctor had so much sadness at the whole situation. Because no 10-year-old should be out trying to research ways to lighten their skin. That didn't happen. So years later, so that's how I grew up with the whole skin color thing. I didn't like it. I didn't like being dark. I didn't like being the butt of the jokes in my family. I didn't like it being brought up. Just didn't like it. So as an adult, like, I'm in college and I'm trying to do this whole therapy, self healing thing. And one of the things that came up was me wanting to be lighter and me wanting to be a different race, all of these things. And I remember my therapist at the time was like, you're moving into transition, you're changing this, that, and the other. It's also time for you to change your old limiting beliefs. So that was the first time. It was interesting how my transition coincided with me working on my issues with racism and colorism. Now, this was the time I started watching colorism content. Now, you have to understand, I was in college in the year 2011. And in 2011, YouTube was a different place. And there weren't a lot of people talking about it. So I'll never forget watching a documentary. It was like a short documentary where this dark skinned girl talked about her experience of colorism in the United States. And it was such a relief to hear somebody, express so many feelings that I'd had. And that was important. Look, the colorism conversation is an important conversation and it is one that must be had. But I do think for a black person, for an Indian person, anyone with a darker skinned complexion, my best advice is watch one short documentary where someone speaks about their colorism experience, feel validated in that, watch no more, and then seek, a psychologist who's going to work with you in learning to, love and accept and embrace your skin. The reason I say do not continue watching colorism content after you felt validated is because a lot of people within the colorism content space on YouTube, realistically, they are quite bitter. They are quite angry. And from what I've noted, and I mean, I've watched so many different colorism content creators. I've gone from like Chrissy, I've gone from I Am Eloho, even a lot of smaller, lesser known ones. So I've watched a lot of them. And I will say, just from my personal assessment, the colorism conversation can lead to racism. It definitely can lead to racism in so many ways. And I'll explain how it can lead to racism. I think the first way the colorism conversation contributes to a racism, well, racism and bullying, is it creates spaces where you are allowed to speak about someone from a different phenotype in a very rude and aggressive and hateful way. And I get it, like a lot of black women especially have felt slighted, um, have felt slighted by media and society because they are so dark. I get it. Like, I'm dark skinned. I've walked these dark skinned streets. But the thing is, the colorism conversation, you get a lot of content creators that will berate, bully, and talk about the experience of another black woman, of a mixed race woman, and or even a white or Hispanic woman. There was a content creator named Simji. Now, Cynthia G, I loved watching her, but I used to watch her during the worst period of my life after I had been assaulted. So, of course, I resonated to her energy. Simji would talk about white women having hair that is reminiscent of dog hair, all the while wearing a straight blonde wig. She would talk about how, some Hispanic women or lighter skinned women or white women are like the Michelin man. And she loved using this phrase of melanin deficiency to describe, people that were not black or, you know, she would describe them as having a melanin deficiency. The word deficiency, when there's a deficiency, it means that there is something wrong. And that's exactly the energy that the colorism conversation often has. It is one of attacking other women, usually. They never attack the men. They never attack the men. They never talk about how white men or light skinned men or this type of man has hair that is reminiscent of a dog. No, all of that heat is saved for the women. Which brings me to my next point, that the colorism conversation is male centered. It has nothing to do with the social justice that we thought it did. Yes, many of us experienced colorism from our family members and had one or two experiences outside of that from other people. But I can tell you this, the majority of colorism complaints, or people who have been traumatized, myself included, by colorism, it stems with social status. It stems in social status, not social justice. It's male centered in the sense that when we have colorism conversations, we ask questions like, when are we going to get corrective promotion? When are we going to see an unambiguous dark skinned black woman as the love interest or the lead? Why are they not enough rappers dating dark skinned women? This light skinned girl in my class used to get all of the attention and she was conceited. Can you see how the conversation in and of itself is centered around social status and privilege? It's not equal to racism, because racism has this nastiness where it is systematic and it is in all areas of society, whereas colorism exists within predominantly the dating space, predominantly within the entertainment, modeling, um, modeling spaces, because I'll be honest, especially with Western media, especially in the US, the black women that are used are usually lighter skinned or mixed race women. Now, that does need to change, and we do need more representation. But what I can tell you is getting online and engaging in colorism conversation, you have to be honest with yourself. It's about social status. It's about being viewed as desirable. And it largely does hinge on the male gaze and how males see you. Colorism content often seeps into divestment content, which I have always found very interesting. I'm a divester, but I find it so interesting how there's this one content creator. Her name is, I actually love her channel, or I used to watch her channel a lot, but I can't really watch it as much. But her channel is called Lexus Exodus, and it was a divestment channel where she encouraged dark-skinned, unambiguous black women to marry outside of the black community, to be with white men, Hispanic men, Asian men. But at the same time, She would call white women, her words, not mine, white whales. She would call, I've forgotten a lot of those names, but she just went in on the white girls. Oh, she used to call them bottom barrel Beckies. And she would go on about how, what they used to say? She'd go on about how black men, because they hate themselves, will date a white woman who doesn't have much status in her community, and then they procreate and they join and make, mixed babies because they're trying to erase his genes and all of that. Those were the talking points. However, this woman is married to a white man. However, there was still this encouragement that we as black women predominantly should marry within white spaces. How the hell are you going to marry into a white community when you hate the women in that community? I don't know. Colorism and divestment and hypergamy content altogether, it just seemed like a megalomarkle me way into white society. It just feels like that. It feels disingenuous because, and not to say colorism doesn't exist. I've experienced colorism. I wanted to end my life because of colorism, and I do still experience things, but it is racism, not colorism. It is racism, not colorism. I can be honest. Colorism content is only there to keep you miserable and feeling sorry for yourself. A lot of content creators, when they have made their videos, are having very dysregulated and emotional responses to triggers and hypothetical situations, and or situations that have not even happened to them. There are so many content creators, like I remember this one video where they were talking about the situation with Cassie and P. Diddy, and the basic conversation was that darker skinned women are lucky because lighter skinned women, they're the first on the Titanic and they're the ones who are going to get all the ABUSE. But in the same breath, we also want to be first in that queue to get the same ticket to the Titanic. So it's very, very, very much contradictory. So very, very much contradictory. And realistically, and I'm not saying that all colorism content creators do this, but I have a feeling the majority do. Girl, they're just fishing for compliments. Fishing for compliments. And I get it. I fish for compliments too. You know, I fish for compliments. I like it when people compliment my appearance and celebrate my appearance. But the minute you start using either racist or aggressive language against all other women that don't share your skin color, that kind of makes you a racist, and it actually makes you the colorist that you are claiming everyone else to be. Colorism content conversation is also, look, I understand you have to be authentic on the internet, but what you need to understand is it is embarrassing in some ways when a racist person who's having a bad day, or a light skinned woman or an Asian woman who's having a bad day, or has had an altercation or an argument with a black woman, there is nothing more therapeutic than for them to turn on YouTube and watch a video of a dark skinned, unambiguous black woman complain about how miserable their life is. Overall, it doesn't make us look good. I think, like, I quit watching colorism content when I started healing, but I really got into exotical content. Now, exotical content was primarily designed for light skinned women and mixed race women who have been bullied and harassed by darker skinned women. But the thing is, it's funny about the exotical channels. They speak from a place of power, they speak from a place of privilege. Yes, they talk about, their traumatic experiences and pain and things that have happened and why they are the way that they are. But they uplift each other. They do not have the same energy or smoke that us dark skinned, unambiguous women or trans women have for them. And the funny thing is, it's not just mixed race women. It's not just light skinned women who watch Exoticals channel. I mean, I'm a transgender, dark skinned South African watching and supporting Exoticals United and all those other channels. They're white women, they're literally Asian women who are watching this stuff. We're watching it because when we watch content like that, it makes us stand in our power. There is no contradiction. Like, there is no contradiction with them. Whereas with colorism content, more often than not, it is predominantly African Black Americans with either Caribbean or African parents who have, like moved to the Americas. So you have to ask, are they conflating xenophobia with colorism? Because I'll be honest, the majority of colorism content creators, you name them, Queen Choba, Expressive, Chrissy, I am Eloho, all of them either have Caribbean or West African parents. And if you're a person of immigrant parents and you are darker skinned, the xenophobia can feel like colorism. There are a lot of, like, it's colorism content is I mean, the voice of colorism content has become Africans and Caribbeans. Whereas this is an issue that is, I feel, although it's felt all over the world, has a deeper history within the United States. I honestly, yeah, like, I wish colorism content creators would consider that every time they make disparaging comments about people of other races or people who look different to them, they just are, like, they're literally just becoming the bullies that bullied them. And this idea, I'm sorry, sometimes colorism content creators can actually be funny, but not because they're trying to be funny, but because of the contradictions. Now, with colorism content that leads to divestment content, there's this huge emphasis on how, we should have natural hair and we should be with men of other races, and men of other races love us in our natural 4C shrunken hair. Girl, don't lie. Maybe some do, or maybe like the guy likes you because of your personality or something else in your that you have going on. But the colorism conversation has gotten to a point where it is delusional. The divestment conversation has gotten to a point where it's hilarious. It's literally hilarious. And I would laugh harder if it wasn't sad. If it wasn't sad, why are we as Black people so divided? Why are we as Black people so divided? Look, I get it. I was the kid who had a brick in my hand trying to break my nose off because I wanted a nose like Britney Spears. When I got older, I wanted to look like Beyonce and be light skinned. And yeah, I felt some type of way that my hair didn't grow that way. Here is my thing. I think if you have an issue with being dark skinned, don't go to the internet looking for answers. Those people, the internet is confused, very confused. If you have an issue with your skin color, realistically, and I'm just going to be honest, these are your options. You have three of them. So, option one, sit and loathe in your misery. Accept your circumstances and be sad about it. Option two, which is the harder option, work on yourself. Learn to have empathy, not only for others, but for yourself. Work with a good psychologist within your area, and commit to years and years of unlearning all of the subconscious messages you received from parents or society. Or three, just have surgery. Look, I'm not about to listen to somebody have some emotionally dysregulated panic attack on the internet talking about how awful life is and how awful the world is and how they wish they had never been born. We live in a day and age where you can literally have glutathione shots. You can literally take vitamin C. If you do not like your hair type, get a wig, get extensions, buy something that mimics that hairstyle, try and copy that beauty ideal, try and bring it as close to the reality of who you are. Transition, basically. Transition from being whatever you looked like before into being the version of beauty that you want. Because the only reason colorism hurts is because it's male centered. It's male centered. It's about beauty and social status. So acknowledge the fact that it is the social status and the beauty that you want and the proximity to certain things that you associate with light skin and beauty. Then go on ahead and have your surgery. I hope it looks good. I hope it works. And I'm being honest. I really hope it looks good because I feel like the world's at a point where Black women really should not have to sacrifice their mental health because the world in the year 2024 still decides to be racist and colorist. Baby girl, I'm going to say something to you, and this is going to be extremely unpopular. Do what you need to do to get through. If you want to go out and have those shots and lighten your skin, do it. Do it if that's what you want and it is going to alleviate or reduce the mental stress and pressure and depression and make your overall quality of life. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just what I think. You have three options: be sad, get healing, health, go to church, go to the imam, go to the mosque, go to temple. Do something. Do something with God, spirits, and angels and your ancestors. Learn to love yourself. Number two will take longer. Number three will be expensive. And number one will turn you into an alcoholic and an unpleasant person. So those are your choices. It sounds terrible, but personally, I do not watch colorism content anymore. I'm completely enthralled in the world of exoticals because they remind me of my power. They, like, every time I listen to their videos, it's not only funny, it's informative. Um, yeah, colorism content is not where it's at. It's really not where it's at. And the funny thing is, a lot of colorism content creators have taken down their videos, removed their videos because their videos are of them being openly, discriminatory. Their videos are of them, crying about how a black guy doesn't, want to be with them, or a rapper in a hypothetical situation has made a decision that does not include them. So a lot of colorism content creators have removed their videos. And there's now this new trend of, dark skinned black women um, getting on, talking exotical talking points, but masking it as though it is a colorism conversation. Okay. I'm glad everyone is getting the healing that they need. If you sat through this video, please, for God's sakes, stop watching colorism content. Girl, go watch a Medea movie, go listen to a song, go talk to a relative. Don't listen to colorism content. It lowers your vibration, it lowers your ability to alchemize. It keeps you sad. You're less likely to attract a partner, to attract opportunities. If you listen to somebody on the internet complaining about how terrible their life is, how is that going to make you feel? Colorism content, I'm sorry, it has helped no one. The only people that it has helped are, well, the content creators and their families and their friends. But the actual people watching, I think it's actually contributed to a decline in mental health for so many Black women. One of the best things that could have happened was Cynthia G getting kicked off YouTube. Cynthia G was absolutely a vile racist. No one can tell me. No one can tell me otherwise. No one can tell me otherwise. So, my best advice for healing wholeness is to not watch colorism content. It serves no purpose. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning into my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it made sense. I love you guys so much. Remember that you're beautiful. In whatever color you come in whatever form you emanate beauty. And when you stand in that, that is when you have your power. Auf Wiedersehen.